How much does it actually cost to get a 5G phone? A little over a year ago, 5G was limited to only the most premium of flagship phones, but today it can be had for a little bit under $250. Still, is the OnePlus Nord N200 anything more than a rebadged Oppo phone? I'm Luke Pock with Android Authority, and here's the TLDR on the Nord N200. For this video, I'm going to give you the too long don't read version first. If you want a budget 5G handset that has a great display, amazing battery life, and an attractive design, then the N200 might be the phone for you. But the N200 has mediocre cameras and isn't the fastest budget phone we've seen on the market. If 5G isn't everything for you, then there are other alternatives to be had for similar prices that offer a little bit more, such as the Nord N10 5G coming in at $300. So let's break that down a bit. At face value, the N200 offers a lot of bang for your buck, starting with the design. It isn't anything we haven't seen before. In fact, the design here is identical to the Oppo A93 5G. Still, it's a fairly attractive one for a budget phone. The back is made of frosted matte glass that doesn't pick up many fingerprints. The front features a nice 6.5-inch 2400 by 1080 90Hz display. In fact, this is one of the few phones in this price bracket to feature a high refresh rate panel. Keep in mind, this isn't an edge-to-edge screen, as there's a fairly large chin even for budget phone standards. The right side features a single power button that doubles as a fingerprint sensor, but this year the famed OnePlus ringer switch is MIA. The other side sees the standard volume rocker, and on the bottom there is a USB-C port, single firing speaker, and 3.5mm headphone jack. Besides the absence of the ringer switch, I'm pretty pleased with the overall design of this phone. Although maybe somewhat boring, it still looks modern enough to hang with the higher tier models that OnePlus is offering while balancing out the price. Still, there's one thing about this design that isn't quite up to par, and that's the haptics. Quite frankly, these might be some of the worst sounding and feeling haptics that I've used in a long while. They are incredibly loud and very rattly. In fact, here's a quick clip showcasing this. Other than that, the phone looks great, and this is even more emphasized by the inclusion of a beautiful Full HD Plus 90Hz panel. I'll be honest, I didn't expect to see a display this nice at this type of price point. It's an IPS panel, which means the colors are rich with deep blacks and bright whites, and the sharpness is pretty good as well, with a pixel density of about 495 pixels per inch. It's no AMOLED screen, but for a device at this price point, it's really hard to do better. Also, you can switch it from 90Hz to 60Hz if you want to save battery life. Now, speaking of battery life, the OnePlus Nord N200 ships with a 5000 mAh battery, which in our testing lasted well over 2 days, with about 8 hours of screen on time. This is nothing short of fantastic for any device, but especially for a budget device. Still, this phone is limited to 18-watt fast charging and takes roughly 75 minutes to fully charge. This isn't out of line with other offerings such as the Galaxy A32 5G, but there's no wireless charging present here on the N200. From here, the pros start to drop off a bit, and the cons start to appear more obvious. The biggest con being the poor camera performance. Now let me be clear, for $250 you're going to be hard pressed to find any budget handset that can produce any decent results. But even still, the camera system on the N200 is only okay. The N200 ships with a triple lens system featuring a 13 megapixel main camera, a 2 megapixel macro lens, and a 2 megapixel depth lens. Outdoor and well-lit photos handle pretty well with good contrast, color, and detail, although in some cases detail can be lost in the shadows. Also, sometimes the color gets a little bit shifted to magenta, but this has only happened a few times. HDR performance isn't that great either, and it struggles to retain the highlights and shadows, often blowing out the highlights too much, and you can really see this in the sky. Shooting indoors is a completely different experience. Because the primary lens ships with a maximum aperture of just f2.2, it's not a very fast lens, which results in some dark and less detailed images. Most images taken indoors are muddy with a fair amount of noise present, and depending on the scenario, are downright unusable. Unfortunately, the 2 megapixel macro lens isn't much better either, and even in direct sunlight produces some less detailed images. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still usable, but still struggles with the issues of the main sensor. The 16 megapixel front-facing camera is a whole nother story altogether. It can produce some fairly decent results, but in portrait mode, the background blur is a little bit rough. Also, it has a tendency to either darken the background or the foreground of the images depending on the scene. In this mode, also there is a fair amount of over softening happening, which softens my skin tones a little bit too much. All in all, it's serviceable, but don't expect amazing results. The only other relative con might be the performance of this phone. First off, let me be clear, in no way is this phone slow or unusable. There just might be certain tasks that aren't well suited for this device. That said, the N200 ships with 4GB of RAM, 64GB of onboard storage, which is then expandable to 1TB via micro SD card. OnePlus gave the N200 a Snapdragon 480 processor, which is a newer 5G chip designed for budget devices. The only major concern I had regarding performance was the lower 4GB of RAM, and would have liked to see 6GB as a minimum. Still, the Snapdragon 480 performs respectably, and in everyday use I didn't experience any sluggishness or stutters. I did notice that load times in certain apps or games were a tad slow, probably due to the 4GB of RAM, but other than that the performance was smooth. I'll also put up some benchmarks here to give you a better idea of the performance. And that's close to wrapping up this device. Like I mentioned earlier, the N200 is one of the few phones to feature 5G at this low cost. Keep in mind that 5G is limited to the sub 6 GHz spectrum and there's no support for millimeter wave technology. Still, T-Mobile or Metro's sub 6 GHz spectrum in the US is growing fast, so just take a look at coverage support before investing in this platform. One quick thing to note is that software support for the N200 isn't amazing, and the Nord N200 will receive one major Android software update in 3 years of security updates. It's on par with other budget offerings, but still lags behind Samsung's 4 years of support. So is the OnePlus Nord N200 worth it? Or is it just a rebadged Oppo phone? Unfortunately, it's probably more of the latter than I would like. Considering that the Nord N10 5G offers a better camera and performance experience and only costs $50 extra, it's probably the better buy. Still, the N200 is a worthy upgrade over the N100, and it ships with a better display and faster processor. At the end of the day, the N200 provides a good enough experience that covers the basics. To be honest, it's hard to beat the value at $250, but if you're willing to shell out a couple of extra bucks, then the Nord N10 5G might be the better buy. Or if you really don't care about 5G and want an amazing camera experience, then the Pixel 4a might be for you. All in all, the OnePlus Nord N200 offers a great 90Hz display, an amazing battery life, and some usable cameras for a very reasonable price. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this video. Let me know down below your thoughts on the N200. Do you think it's worth it? Why or why not? Just let me know. Also, be sure to ask me any tech-related questions or comments, and I'll make sure to answer them at the end of the next episode. Lastly, do you guys like this TLDR format, and do you guys want to see more of it? Just let me know. Okay, that's going to wrap it up. I'm Luke Polk with Android Authority, and I'll catch you in the next video. Silver IS asks, always wondered, why do phone companies make their custom Android versions instead of just using stock Android? Stock is always considered better, and making a custom one seems like extra unwanted work. I think a lot of it has to do with branding and what specific manufacturers want in their phones, and they wouldn't be able to do that if they just ship stock Android. Sure, you can bundle stuff with stock Android, but it's not the same as building your own custom brand, so I think that's why they do it. Joe3D says, root is useful to make a one-to-one backup, which we know not everything has backup on Android. That's true, and I think if you want to root your phone, that's a really good benefit of having that, but not everybody wants to root your phone, and there's other ways of backing up your device. If that's a video you guys want to see, let me know. GoldenHawk786 says, good video, how about another one showing the rise of Google? If that's a video you guys want to see, let me know down below, and we'll make it. Alright, that's going to wrap it up. I'll see you guys later. Peace.